Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to learn how do we print various star patterns. Starting from a very simple pattern, which is going to print the stars in left aligned, and that too, like the first line prints one star, then the number of stars which are printed in every line keeps increasing. Then again, going to the next pattern wherein the number of stars printed in each line keeps decreasing, right? Here again, the number of stars printed increases in every line, but this is right aligned. And here again, the number of stars printed is decreased in every line, but again it is right aligned. Now whenever you think of such kind of patterns, the first thing which comes to mind is, right, we have to solve this with the help of nesting of loops, right, nested loops. Okay, now I agree with that, okay, that we'll be using nesting of loops, but here I'll try to do it in a little bit different way. Okay, let me just demonstrate how exactly I'll try to do it. Now first I have basically written a function which is going to take two arguments, which is the number of character to be printed and what character to be printed. First parameter is what character do you want to print, and the second one is number of times that particular character to be printed. And then inside the function I'm just trying to print that given character n number of times, right? So it does not really matter that either you start with 0 and then go up to n, or you start with 1 and then write I less than or equal to n, because totally we need to print n number of times the given character. Either it can be 0 to n minus 1 or 1 to n, right? Now in order to test this particular one, I have written a simple code out here wherein I'm asking the user, okay, what character do you want to print, and then okay, how many times do you want to print that particular character, and after that I'm trying to call the display function. So first let us try to verify this particular function, then we'll proceed further. I have saved this particular file by the name pattern.c. Now I'd like to run the program. Let us say I would like to print star pattern. Okay, 5 times I want to print. You can just see it is printing 5 stars, okay, in the same line. Now let us say I would like to say no, I would like to print a hash symbol, and let's say I like to print it 8 number of times printing, or I'd like to say I would like to print hyphen symbol, and I'd like to print it 3 times, working perfectly fine. Okay, once we have observed this, then we will try to take up the pattern one by one and try to understand how we should print that. Now first let's begin with the first pattern. Here you can consider this as first line, second line, third line, fourth line and fifth line, and for printing the elements of each line we'll try to call the function once. Now when the first time when you call the function, we need to call the function by passing 2 arguments, which is like I want to print star, and then how many times you want to print, 1 number of times, right? And here again you want to print star, how many times, 2, right? Okay, star is same, so I'll not like to stress more on stars, so I'd like to say 3 here, then I'd like to say 4 here, and then this 5. Right? Remember, if you want to print 5 lines, then we need to stop at 5, and moreover if you want to print more number of lines, then we can just keep on going, right? Okay, here you can just see the counter starts with 1, then goes to 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So if you want to print 5 lines, the counter starts with 1 and it goes up to n. So in order to print this, I'll just do a small modification here, right? Number of times to print, rather than that I'll just say number of lines to print, fine. Okay, and then if you want to print star, I'll just not read this from the user, I'll hard code it as star. Now here I'll continue with the loop. Remember, I need to start with 1 here because in the first line I need to print 1 number of stars, and then I'm just going all the way up to n, wherein n is inclusive. For that purpose I've written I less than or equal to n, right? I plus plus. Okay, now the character symbol is a star symbol, wherein this second argument, which is the number of times to print, first time it is 1, second time it is 2, third time it is 3. I'm just controlling with this, and then after printing the number of stars of each line, I'd like to print a new line, right? I just like to print a new line here. Done. Okay, now let me try to verify is this working fine or not. Okay, let me try to compile this program and then run, right? Okay, I'm not reading the character because I'm hard coding to star. How many lines to print? 5. I want to print 8 stars, done. I want to print 3 stars, working perfectly fine. My first pattern is done. Quite simple. Okay. Now, what is the benefit of this code over nesting of loops? Here, you can just observe I have used the same variable I as well as I have used the variable I here. Exactly the same thing. Now, since they are in different functions, it really does not matter what variable you use here and what variable you use here. It does not matter because they are in different functions. But if you are putting both the loops into a same place, then the names should have been different. Like in some place we use I and then J, right? So many times people have a confusion that the inner for loop should be I or the outer for loop should be I, right? That's the first benefit. Now let us try to move into the second pattern and try to understand how do we print the second pattern. Now here, if you can just observe, I want to print same star, but first time I want to print 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, right? Now you can just see you should run a counter which starts with 5 and keeps decrementing, goes all the way up to 1. So in order to print this particular pattern, I'll be using the same for loop, but the order in which the value of I changes, it changes. Initial value of I is n. We are moving in the reverse direction, right? So I need to say that I is greater than 0, or I can say greater than or equal to 1. Clear? Okay. Now let me try to print this pattern. File it because you've done changes in this code. 5, printing perfectly, right? So we have tested this. Clear? I hope things are clear. I start with n, then keep on decrementing one by one, and then once you reach to 0, you stop. Remember, when it is 1 we print, when it is 0 we come out of the loop. Fine. Now let us look into the third pattern. The third pattern says that we need to print two things. One is the spaces, or you can consider this as some other character so that it can be more visible. I've used this, or you can consider this as spaces, right? Now let us try to understand how many spaces you want to print and then how many stars you want to print, right? Okay, here if you're working with 5 lines, the number of spaces to be printed in first line is 4, then number of stars is 1, right? Spaces is 3, stars is 2, spaces is 2, stars is 3. So if you can just observe this, stars is always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is same as whatever we did in the first pattern. Whatever they did in the first pattern, right? The number of stars remains the same. But before we could print the stars, we need to print the spaces. So how many spaces do we need to print? See, if you're working with 5 lines, the first one should be 5 minus 1. Can you just observe this? Wherein 5 is, the number of lines what you wanted to print. Clear? 5 minus 2 equal to 3. 5 minus 3 equal to 2. And then same way, 5 minus 4 equal to 1, and 5 minus 5 equal to 0. Is this clear? And then from where did we get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? We can easily get with the same variable which is keeping track of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Clear? Okay, fine. Let me just go down here, and since it is very similar to this, I will again copy paste this code, right? Okay, then I'll comment the second pattern, not required. If you want to print all the patterns, you can print all the patterns simultaneously without any problem. But first we need to display the spaces, or we can also say some other visible character, right? Because spaces are generally not visible, so we can just write some other character, and that is how much? N minus I. After that we need to print I number of stars. Clear? That's it. Okay. Let me try to compile this and then execute. 5, working fine. Yeah, if you don't want this hyphen symbol, just remove this, but please make sure that you give a space here, right? Okay, let me just save this and then compile. Done. Done. Quite simple. Okay, now let's move into the last pattern, guys. Now again, it's very similar to this pattern, second pattern whatever we printed, but only thing is before we start printing this, we need to print some spaces. The number of spaces to be printed here is like 0, then here it is 1, then here it is 2, right, 3, and then 4. The number of stars to be printed is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right, this, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it is very similar to second pattern whatever we have done, but just before that we need to print the spaces. How many spaces we need to print here? How do we calculate with the help of an expression? Right, if you want to calculate with the help of expression, what you can do it is, if this is the value of n, right, okay, I can just say 5 is the number of lines, and then we start a counter from 5, then goes to 4, 3, 2, 1. So the value of I will be 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Right, the number of lines remains as 5, right? So I'll just say 5, which is the number of lines, minus the number of stars you want to print in the current one. So 5 minus 5 is 0, right? Now the number of lines part remains the same, but the number of stars what you want to print is 4, right? 5 minus 4 is 1, 5 minus 3 is 2, 5 minus 2 is 1, 5 minus 1 is 4. Clear? So I just need to make sure that I use this one, which is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever I have used in second pattern, the same value I should use it in the expression here, that is n minus the variable value. So let me just copy the second pattern here, right? Then let me to print it, and since I don't require the third pattern, I think that okay, so this part is fine, but we need to print the spaces before this. And how many spaces do you need to print before this? That is controlled by n minus I. That's it, guys. Now try to compile this. Right, is this working? Perfectly working, right? Okay, now let us try to print all the patterns one after the other. Let us not comment this, let us enable this, but after every pattern we'll just try to print a new line, okay, a separator stating that okay, the new pattern is started. First pattern, second pattern, then statement, and right, many, let us say 3. Got it? All 4 patterns, or just try to say it as 5, right? Okay, we are able to print all the 4 patterns, but what you could observe here is we reuse the function. We just reuse the function. We first wrote this function, okay, and then we were reusing it, right? Here you can just see we just reused it. But remember, if you have not used the function, okay, there would have been one for loop here. For this, again, there should have been a for loop. Again, there should have been a for loop, right? So there will be like 3 for loops, but not 3 levels of nesting, 2 levels of nesting. So we are getting rid of all those confusions. This also tells you the benefit of using functions, right? I hope you guys have learned how do we print patterns in a much easier. Thank you, guys.